Welcome back. You're watching Network Africa on Channels Television. The Chibok schoolgirl rescued from Sambisa Forest yesterday will be meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari later. 19-year-old Amina Ali, who was found by the civilian JTF with a 4-month-old baby, is being accompanied to the presidential villa by the Borno State Governor Kashim Shettima. Amina is the first of the missing Chibok schoolgirls to be rescued, since 219 of them were abducted from a secondary school in Chibok, Borno State, northeast Nigeria, 2 years ago. Now, the army says she and a suspected Boko Haram terrorist, who claims to be the father of her child, are both receiving medical attention in Maiduguri. The presidential spokesperson, Femi Adesina, said the young woman would be helped to reintegrate into society. Well, many see what has happened recently as a sign of hope, but some security experts are warning that authorities need to proceed with caution. One of them is security and terrorism expert David Otto, who joins us from London. David, thanks for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
From your perspective, does this missing girl who was found recently strike you as a bit suspicious?
Yes, I think it's very important for us to, first of all, be very optimistic about the fact that one of the Chibok girls has been found. But, you know, it's also very important for us to take this with a very, very huge amount of caution, considering the fact that, you know, we know that the girl was not actually rescued, but she was actually found in the woods, you know, searching for what we refer to as firewood with her husband. So I think, you know, one of the key things is, and one of the updates that we've just had at the moment is that, you know, Amina Ali is equally pregnant for a second child, and also the fact that, you know, the husband, who is supposed to be a suspected member of Boko Haram, was actually kidnapped. Himself, you know, he's actually said to have been kidnapped in the village in Mubi. So it's very important for us to understand that, you know, this Chibok girl could be a kind of a strategy by the Boko Haram organization to actually show the government that, you know, there are signs of life, you know, just for them to. Because remember, last week, you know, we about 2 weeks ago, we had a situation whereby, you know, 15 of the girls were paraded. But up until now, since this girl was found, we have not been able to see the actual encircling of her face, you know, amongst all the thousands of photographs that have been put out about the Chibok girl. So this is a very, very suspicious finding, you know, by the Civilian Joint Task Force.
David, now that you mentioned it, I'm beginning to observe that, you know, you said there was no excitement on her face. It seemed more like she expected to be found. I don't know. But, you know, if this was a strategy if this indeed was a strategy by Boko Haram, placing her in a strategic position to be found by the Nigerian army, what sort of agenda do you think Boko Haram could have?
I mean, it's very important. One of the very, very things that, you know, when she was found, one of the things that she said was that, you know, 6 of the girls have been killed and the rest are still alive. This is very, very doubtful, because we know that most of the girls that were kidnapped by Boko Haram have been given to several cells. You know, some of them have been married off to different individuals. So for her to actually say and give us a very precise number of 6 of them have been killed and the rest are still alive tells you that, you know, she may have been briefed, you know, by her captors, you know, to actually give them information just for the government to be put under pressure, you know, that, you know, most of the girls are still alive. Mind you, we're talking about 218 or something girls, you know. One of the biggest controversies is the fact that we've not been able to put any figures on the amount of missing girls. But for her to actually give us a number of girls that are actually have been killed and the number that are still alive, you know, it's very, very suspicious, you know, indeed.
I remember you saying that yesterday, David, about her presence being used by Boko Haram to put the government under pressure. But if the Nigerian government were to approach this, continue with their search, of course, for the Chibok girls and their raid on Sambisa Forest, how would you advise them to approach?
I think it's very important, you know, we have to take this one step at a time. You know, if I was advising the government on this issue, yes, we found one of the girls, but what has to be taken into consideration is the fact that, we cannot really take everything for granted. What the Nigerian government has to do now is to get as much information from this girl and her supposed husband as much as possible, and also, to be kind of, very careful in terms of making any deals, because, that also gives us, the kind of analysis that there may be some, kind of split within these groups, because if this girl is not amongst the 15 girls that we just saw a couple of weeks ago, and she's not amongst the girls of the 100 and something that we had when the girls were kidnapped, then it tells you that, maybe there are different factions, within Boko Haram. So the government has to be careful in terms of actually knowing who they want to speak to, who they're going to crack a deal with, and which of the groups, they want to rely on. But I think, with finding this girl, it's going to give them an element of hope, perhaps. If not, if we're not really sure if this girl is going to mislead, the government, but we think, the government has the necessary expertise to ascertain whether, what she's giving them is quite valid. But they have to be really careful with these kind of information.
David, appreciate your thoughts and your insight on this issue. David, also a security and terrorism expert in London. So let's get into Amina Ali's mind now. I have with me in the studio clinical psychologist Dr. Charles Zume. You're welcome to Network Africa.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we don't have Amina here to ask her any questions or to find out, how she's doing and all of that. But help us understand. She's just coming out of captivity. What's she thinking? What's probably going through her mind?
Yes, I think we're looking at a very long period of incarceration or captivity for the young girl. I think she was abducted when she was like 17 years, now 19, and now coming up with pregnancy and a child. So many complicated issues there. And you have been very good. The first stage of rehab, which is like a full physical examination to know whether there are any physical complications. Then after that first stage, we'll move on to the psychological evaluation stage, because a lot of things must have happened along the line. Now, because there are so many begging questions we have to look at. Probably, are we considering what's called Stockholm Syndrome? Because she was found with a man.
Yeah,
and they are relating very well. What could have happened?
And she referred to him as a husband.
As the husband. So you could see, that's why we need a full evaluation to know the level of psychological distress she has been subjected to. Or she had used a kind of defense mechanism. That is where the Stockholm Syndrome comes in, and formed a bond with the so-called husband. And now she's beginning to pick up her life from a different perspective, oblivious of the person she was before she went into captivity.
When you say this Stockholm Syndrome, is it possible that she probably didn't want to be rescued?
Most likely. Where was she found? Was he looking for help where she was found?
She was in Sambisa Forest.
Good. With the so-called husband, with her baby. Any sign of distress, psychological distress when she was found? These are some of the issues. Probably she has accepted her new life and is living it. And if you remember the circumstances that led to her captivity, it was a lot distressing. Then we had a young girl with focus in school preparing for her exam. Okay? Then this happened. She must have been traumatized. And probably in captivity, nobody knew exactly what they were subjected to. What if they had been brainwashed? Okay? And then moved into a man that gave her succor. And that is what she has found out to be her new life. Okay? Because they were hopeless initially. They could have gone through a lot of emotional turmoil, psychological distress, including post-traumatic stress disorder at that period.
Yeah, and it sounds like she might need, a reorientation, because she was a child before she was kidnapped.
Yes.
And that sort of says, the sort of situation that, the rest of the other Chibok girls are. Someone said this morning that they're probably scattered across West Africa.
Yes.
So it might not be possible to gather all of them, have all of them, find all of them in one place.
Yeah.
But if you have to think about, them bringing them out of captivity, it sounds like a painful process trying to remind them of the life that they had before they were kidnapped.
It's not really a painful process if handled by a professional, because that's the only way out. out of that predicament. Now, if you leave them to live with the trauma, okay, it's going to impact on their functioning negatively all through their life. Now, in the process of managing post-traumatic stress disorder, we proceed in stages. Like I've told you, you rule out the physical condition that could be a constant reminder to the person with this, and then you move on to the psychological state. First, you do evaluation to know the extent of the damage that has been done. Then you debrief the child. It is a systematic approach until the person comes to terms with her experiences. You'll be able to know whether she has been using defense mechanism, okay, to cope. A lot of them go into denial, believing that it never happened, only for you to come back later to hurt them in a bitter way. So that's why they need to go through this process of desensitization, debriefing, cognitive behavioral therapy to put them back into their... Because obviously, we know there are so many psychological problems the girl could be going through. Probably you have had cognitive distortions. Okay, there could be self-blame there. Okay, now the interpersonal relationship, she could be having a new orientation to life, okay, and then she could have been going through other problems of trust and safety.
Yeah, I also want to point out, you know, the focus now is on her. The focus is on Amina Ali, but let's not forget she has two other responsibilities.
Yes.
The young man who claims to be her husband,
yes,
and then the child.
Good.
So how would all of this affect her relations with these two people in her life?
Exactly, because that's what the problem is. If she's not properly managed now, okay, it's going to impact negatively on whatever she does, including her immediate family. And then usually we'll talk about short-term and long-term impact on this girl. Let's look at now, she left a single person, a young girl with dreams that have been scuttled. Now have a baby, she now has a husband at 19. Was she prepared for that before it happened? What orientation did he get before this new responsibility?
Okay, so moving forward, what does she do?
Yes, moving forward, that's what I said. First, a comprehensive psychological evaluation that will help to design a treatment plan and the rehab plan that will accommodate her new responsibility.
Yeah, but moving forward,
yes,
what does she do with her with the so-called husband and the child?
Do we even know who the husband is? Is he a husband? In good.
But that's why I keep saying the so-called husband.
The so-called husband.
I mean,
and that is exactly why during the
her.
evaluation, we'll be able to understand her perception of all these things around her. Okay. And then we'll design a plan that will accommodate these new responsibilities and probably making her realize her dream that had been scuttled.
It sounds like a long process, but I'm sure you have seen, you know, scenarios like this. You've seen situations like this often, you know, in your career.
Yes.
Do they ever come out normal?
Normal is a term we don't usually use because you can't define it.
Okay,
rather, yes, she can come back to function again. Like, that's what rehabilitation tries to do. Okay? Bring them back to their original state of functioning before this problem. Okay? Yes. That's why we institute management plan. Okay? But the thing is, like, you're not going to take away the experiences. Okay, because it's part of them now. All you need to do now is to make them live with the experiences without causing them any emotional, psychological distress, just like so many other people that have been traumatized in the past.
Dr. Charles Zime, I appreciate your being here. A great resource for Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
And when we come back after the break on the program, Ghana's election likely to be a battle over who can fix the economy. Please join us again.